The Minnesota Somali fraud began to be made public. One of the top calls coming into our office was people reporting what they thought might have been some type of fraud. One of those areas that we get a lot of calls about is through the Affordable Care Act. And the president touched on this last night, with hundreds of billions of dollars that have gone to insurance companies. What we are seeing through the ACA, where as many as 12 million people that are enrolled have never even used the insurance, which means most of them probably don't know they have that. They were fraudulently enrolled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. We are pleased that you're before us today. I will say that looking at your background, I think the work you've done in drug trafficking and human smuggling, financial fraud, really suits you for this position. And I'm pleased to see you put forward for this position, and pleased that the president is really taking decisive action to crack down on fraud. It was so interesting after the Minnesota Somali fraud began to be made public. One of the top calls coming into our office was people reporting what they thought might have been some type of fraud. So it shows how much this is needed and how correct the president and the vice president and AG Bondi are to say, let's do something about this. Congress has a responsibility also, and last month, many of my colleagues here joined me introducing a Fraud Accountability Act. And this would clarify the Immigration and Nationality Act to make certain that all types of fraud committed against your local, state, federal government and the American people are deportable offenses. So I think it's important that the American public see these individuals that have committed this fraud held to account. So I'd like for you to talk for just a minute about why that mission is so important, and then how you're going to use this division to attack all types of fraud.
Thank you, Senator. Fighting crime, in particular crime that's public, that's in your face, that's known, that neighbors can sense and feel, but where there is a government that's paralyzed to move in the face of that known, in-your-face sort of crime and fraud, that is not a good place to be as a country. And that is a place where whistleblowers feel like they can't come forward, where victims feel like they are not empowered to share their story. If there is not a Justice Department that is truly working for the United States day in and day out to bring justice to our communities. So the issue of fraud in particular, where it is very much in the open and very much in the forefront of the minds of the American people, the Department of Justice must be nimble, must be capable of wrapping our arms around that and endeavoring to fight every day to find where that fraud is happening and to ensure that the public knows.
One of those areas that we get a lot of calls about is through the Affordable Care Act. And the president touched on this last night, with hundreds of billions of dollars that have gone to insurance companies, people that are fraudulently enrolled in these programs. The GAO has done a very revealing study on this. So how do you prioritize these different types of fraud cases, like what we see in Minnesota, but also what we are seeing through the ACA, where as many as 12 million people that are enrolled have never even used the insurance, which means most of them probably don't know they have that. They were fraudulently enrolled.
Senator, the way that we start cutting into the mountain of debt, or I'm sorry, mountain of fraud, is by leaning on the experienced data analysts and agents who can illuminate the pathway to the fraud that's occurring in all of these programs. We must be driven by that ground level work that's done by our data analysts and the agents. They illuminate the pathway to the fraud, and then that's where our investigators and the prosecutors step in to then ultimately bring justice in a court of law.
I do want to take my last few seconds here and commend you for the work with the Memphis Safe Task Force. To date, the Memphis Safe Task Force, federal agencies, 23 federal agencies, the National Guard, Tennessee Highway Patrol, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the mayor of Memphis, the police chief, working together, have made over 7,500 arrests. They have recovered over 1,500 illegal weapons. They have recovered 154 missing children. And I will tell you, having the ability to help oversee and deliver that type program and bring together so many disparate groups, I think is such a credit to your leadership skill. So touch on quickly what you did in overseeing the Memphis Safe Task Force.
Senator, working with the Memphis Safe Task Force and other public safety task forces over the last year has been an incredible honor to bring together people who all want to see the best for their community, but have never been able to get into one room to talk about it and to make it happen. And that's what we've done under President Trump's leadership, under Attorney General Bondi's leadership, under the Director of the Marshals' leadership. We've come together and said, we're going to take on this problem, and we're not going to leave this room until it's fixed. And the homicide rate in Memphis has dropped by over 35%. Violent crime rates have dropped significantly. And the fact that matters most to me are the lives that we have saved. And I will do it again anywhere so that those lives can be saved. It's been an honor to work with the group in Memphis.
Well,
Senator
states
Combs.
like Minnesota and Illinois would do well to learn from what we've done in Memphis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonald, thank you for your dedication to federal service, to your wife, to your children, to your parents, to your family. Thank you for your recognizing the blessing of the opportunity to serve. I am interested in hearing your perspective, not just on the role you're being nominated to, but the general direction of fraud enforcement under this administration. Look, Americans, Delawareans, folks of all backgrounds rely on critical federal programs. And when the money that is supposed to be spent by those programs is diverted to fraud, is stolen, that reduces the amount of resources available to do good in our society. And I agree with you. We need to make sure that Americans' tax dollars are spent wisely and those funds are going where they really should go. I am concerned, however, the administration is less concerned with specifically fighting fraud than with targeting people and states it dislikes or that it has a partisan agenda against. One of the reasons I've got this concern is seeing that at the same time the administration's creating a new DOJ division and suggesting it may be directed by the White House, they have shut down or eliminated or defunded other anti-fraud units like the Consumer Protection Branch, like the Tax Division. I think if President Trump were serious about combating fraud, he'd be applauding the great work done by the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office under the previous administration to tackle social services fraud instead of running attorneys out of that office. And if he were serious about tackling fraud, he wouldn't be pardoning the very people that dedicated career prosecutors like yourself spent years investigating and prosecuting for stealing from American taxpayers.